must have more swords for the Imperial soldiers.
And the god said unto the child to Skyrim, come spring. For our hero does walk the land, walk the land, walk the land. Our hero does walk the land, and the dragons will flee. Flowers bloom on the land, children walk hand in hand. Sun shining on white sand, to Skyrim comes peace.
Be a problem.
Don't you Nords put any stock in your own traditions? I thought the Moot chose the king. We're backing Elisif. When the Moot meets, they'll do the sensible thing.
Not everyone's agreed to the moot. You've been here long enough to know that Nords aren't always sensible. We follow our hearts.
So what? Ulfric gets this crown and then suddenly he's High King?
No, it's not as simple as that. But the Jagged Crown would be a potent symbol for his cause to rally around. But if we found it first,
And we gave it to Elisif.
in the absence of the moot, it would further legitimize her claim.
Perhaps. I'm entrusting you with what resources I can spare. I'm warning you, if this turns out to be a waste of time and men,
It won't be a waste.
make sure you take the auxiliary here. You can send her back when you get there and find nothing but old bones and cobwebs.
The Stonefist's no fool. He's found the crown, but we'll get to it first. Welcome to the Legion, Auxiliary. Listen up. Ulfric's right-hand man, Galmar Stonefist, has located what he believes is the final resting place of the Jagged Crown. We're going to make sure he doesn't get his hands on it. The rest of my men are already assembling outside ᴛɪᴛဃᴇ. I'll meet you there as soon as I finish up here. A powerful relic of a golden age, long since past. Legend has it that the crown is made from the bones and teeth of ancient dragons, and is said to increase the power of the wearer. Whatever the truth, if Ulfric gets his hands on it, it would be a powerful symbol around which to rally support for his cause. Well, to be frank, we don't. Its location was lost with King Borgus when the Great Hunt killed him off while on his Lushan campaigns. Supposedly, his body was brought back to Skyrim and secretly buried with the crown. Knowledge of that location was lost in the Wars of Secession, but my agents report that Galmar is pretty damn convinced ᴛɪᴛဃᴇ is the tomb of King Borgus.
I swear to you, unnatural magics are coming from that cave. There are strange noises and lights. We need someone to investigate.
Then we will immediately send out a legion to scour the cave and secure the town. Hafingar's people will always be safe under my rule.
Your Eminence, my scrying has suggested nothing in the area. Dragonbridge is under Imperial control. This is likely superstitious nonsense.
Perhaps a more tempered reaction might be called for?
Oh, yes, of course, you were right. Falk, tell Captain Aldous I said to assign a few extra soldiers to Dragonbridge.
Thank you, Jarl Elisif. But about the cave?
I will have someone take care of the cave as well, Varnius. You can rest.
Of business, please see Falk Firebeard, my steward. Not yet, no. Although it is true my husband Torrig was the High King, and I am his widow. Now is not the time to lay claim to such a title. This land is riven by war, and her people suffer for it. The Stormcloaks are a blight on Skyrim, and like any blight, must be purged. Only then will I take my rightful place as High Queen. A question I am all too familiar with. One my very Thanes ask often. They worry that Tullius is so focused on the war that he risks forgetting what's best for our people. The real irony is that, while General Tullius is certainly no Nord, the people of Skyrim would be lost without him. Trust is always difficult, especially for my people. Yet we must trust in Tullius's leadership. For what other choice do we have? Oh, I thought that matter was handled. I think Falk is taking care of that.
Good. We've wasted enough time here.
Be careful.
Do you have business with the court? You mean the Dragon Bridge issue? I'll be honest with you. I was planning to let that go. Varnius is a bit jumpy at the best of times. There have been reports of weird happenings near Wolfskull Cave. Travelers disappearing, odd lights. I suspect wild animals, or perhaps bandits. I don't think it's worth our time with the war going on. But if you want to clear out the cave, I'll make sure you're repaid for your work.
Nerd. Just picture it. 2 women, the dusty road, strapping men at every tavern, a fortune in gold to be claimed.
Wrong there. You helped Ulfric Stormcloak escape the city after he murdered High King Torrin. By opening that gate for Ulfric, you betrayed the people of Solitude.
Traitor! There was no murder. Ulfric challenged Thorin. He beat the High King in fair combat. Such is our way. Such is the ancient custom of Skyrim and all lords. He died well.
Sovngarde.
What can I do for you?
All I ask is to see my family.
Excellent. I think you'll be glad that you made this decision. Yes? Have you seen that shrine of Azura? They say the Dark Elves built it after they fled from Morrowind. Sight to see. Of course. It's all in this note. Come on in. We got warm food, warm drinks, and warm beds.
Too many drinking games, too many bets, and I'm too old to ever raise the coin on my own. He's a stubborn oaf. I don't know what good it'll do. You should speak to my daughter, Yvette. She's the brains of the family.
What is it, stranger? If you're looking for work, I'm not the person to ask. Now there's a strange request. I suppose there's no harm in it. Go on then. Grab a drink and sit down.
Yes?
I'll warn you now, friend. I'm not exactly known for conversation. The Swillen here isn't worth drinking much of either. Ugh. Many things. When you've lived as long as I have, some of them might even be worth remembering. No, I suppose not. What you have to understand, however, is that I'm not about to relive the past, simply because we share a flagon. Very well. I'll talk with you. What do you want to know? Nothing. but I suppose that's the problem. My name is Yagir, but back when I was younger, they called me Stormhand. A silly name, but the life of a warrior tends to leave its mark in any number of ways. I do, but most of them have faded into memory after all these years. For the longest time, I thought I was Talos Reborn, or the great Dovakhiin. The foolishness of youth, and an unwillingness to let cooler heads prevail when my blade was in hand. All across Skyrim, even down past the Gerald Mountains, I traveled from town to town, cave to cave, seeking thrills and adventure, from days of slaying Draugr and bandits, to nights of feasting and womanizing in the local taverns. I was unstoppable. Aye, but those days are behind me now. You are still young, and you have the whole world ahead of you. Enjoy it while you can. It won't last forever. The same thing that changes anyone. Love. I met my wife while working in Whiterun Hold. A group of rogue students from the college had set themselves up nearby to attack travelers. While they no doubt needed food and supplies as any of us, it soon progressed from stealing to outright massacring everyone in their way. I'd been hired by a group of local farmers, led by 2 patriarchs, to track the mages and put an end to the attacks. The sites had already been cleared by the guards, and anyone I talked to in town were either scared stiff or didn't know anything. I heard that another warrior was also on their path, a fierce, red-headed Nord woman, and I welcomed the challenge. There was nothing wrong with some competition, after all, especially with a warrior of equal skill. However, the winter rains had set in, and as any hunter can tell you, this only made finding my targets more difficult. For days I searched the region, but there was no sign. Tired and annoyed, with days since my last fight, I made the journey back to Dragon's Reach. As I was making my way back, I crossed paths with the merchant near the western watchtower. The rains were relentless as Kain's wrath fell from the heavens, and the merchant was huddled in furs, with an old horse in tow. With barely a hint of sunset poking through the gloom and rain, I walked over and asked them if they needed help back to the city. The woman smiled at me and threw back her hood, red hair and a twinkle in her eye. Before I could even respond, a lightning bolt came crackling through the rain, and she threw herself forwards, knocking both of us to the ground. The mages had sneaked up on us, and I cursed myself for not being more aware, outclassed by my rival no less. The rain was endless and difficult to see in, but it was as much of an advantage to us as it was the attackers. I remember pushing myself up from the soil to see one of the mages come running up, a dagger in one hand and a fire spell in the other. As quickly as I could, I unsheathed my weapon, rolled to the side, and brought it up in a swing, putting all my might behind it. Formed from a section of the cart, I went to help her, only to find another 3 mages moving towards me. Clearly, they thought to overwhelm us with numbers. Perhaps, but they certainly fought like a horde of hag-ravens, and the world toughened them. Aye, but not without ending up with scars of our own. The rain continued to pour down, and the Whiterun plains were too open to try for any strategy. The woman and I ended up back to back, the group of mages almost having exhausted their magica reserves. At last, we found an opening and finished the rest of them off. By that point, our clothes had been soaked with rain and blood, and we were both tired. We agreed to wait till morning and sought refuge in the watchtower, still abandoned back then. The fire pit was serviceable, and some old furs and hay were enough to form a place to rest. There was only room for one of us, but we found a way to make it work, and it kept the two of us warm until the rain passed. Next morning, we returned to Dragon's Reach and told those farmers that the job was done. I was already taken with her by then, and we agreed to split the gold equally. After living a free life on the path, I wanted to be with her. I couldn't contain myself. By the city gate, I told her how I felt in one nervous outpour. I must have looked like a fool. She just stood there, watching me as she listened intently. When I was finished acting like a boy with his first crush, she smiled softly. To onwards, I gave up the womanizing, and we lived a life on the road together. I was a warrior in my prime, and had the love of my life to match. I couldn't have asked for a greater gift than her. We were an odd sight, two warriors working together. Most of the time, it's easier for adventurers to go their own way, but we didn't mind it. She was so beautiful, I can't even begin to describe it, and she showed me there was so much more to life. Two young warriors, fierce and in love. For years, we took work across Skyrim, even further on occasion, and lived however we liked. After being married under the eyes of Mara, we agreed to settle down and move to a small farm on the outskirts of Shore Stone. By then, she was with child, and we couldn't risk any more fights. We hung up our weapons on the wall and started a new life together. I wanted to be with her no matter what, but it wasn't that easy. You seem like the adventuring sort, so perhaps you can sympathize. All my life had been spent in battle, and there I was, a mountain of a man that didn't know one end of a hoe from the other. I was no farmer. I was built for war, not milking cows. Winter came and went, and she gave birth to a baby boy, my son. I thought he was pathetic. All the mewling like an animal. He would cry all night, or otherwise sit gurgling on the floor, babbling in the way that children do. Soon's breath. What on earth was I supposed to do with him? I didn't know how to be a father. More difficult. She had a way with children, as if she'd been destined to be a mother. And then, well, then it all comes back to the Great War. After years of living as an adventurer on the road, I decided to enlist with the Legion. Even if I couldn't help our home, I could, at the very least, help protect my wife and son. Battle was in my blood, and it would be good to get back in the field, or so I thought. Great might be in its name, but I witnessed unimaginable cruelty, and no one walked away from it without scars. When I returned, my boy was almost 2 winters old. It was strange, really, when time passes and stands still. My wife had pleaded with me not to go, not to throw away everything we'd built together, but she was relieved to see that I was still alive. Of course, but what I had seen in the war had put all thought of bloodshed from my mind. I was content, at least, to live out my days in peace, even if life on the farm had its hardships. When a group of bandits came riding up. They demanded gold for our protection against any threats before riding off, saying that they'd return in a few days. It was all nonsense, of course, but I had a family to look after, and both my wife's and my own weapons had been gathering dust above the fire. We talked for a long time and decided that we would pay them, at least for the time being. The farm had set us back quite a lot, but we had spent years building up a small fortune on the road. In hindsight, it was likely word of that fortune that brought those bandits to us in the first place. Huh, gold. What good are septums? True to their word, the bandits came back a few days later. I remember that day, because the afternoon light made the leaves look like they were on fire. But they came in greater force than we were expecting. As I handed the gold to their leader, he knocked it out of my hand and spat in my face. They wanted all of it, or they would kill us. I would have torn him limb from limb right there, but I had a family to look after. I turned and walked slowly towards the house, my wife glaring from the doorway. She was big on himself whenever she got that look in her eyes and her arms were crossed, but all she did was glare at the bandits. I never got the chance. As I moved inside, carefully watching the bandits from the window, one of them had crept up to the side of the house and set it on fire. When the smell of burnt wood hit us, I reached for our weapons above the fireplace and threw my wife's sword in her direction. They were hoping to burn us and the fortune out in one go. The bastards! A volley of arrows tore into the side of the house, and we threw ourselves down on the ground before crawling out, using the smoke as cover. It had already begun to fill the house, that smell that clings to your throat. But we could still save our home. We just had to move quickly. My wife leapt towards the ones waiting by the horses, while I ran around to the side, near the trees where the others lay in wait. The thrill of battle might be exhilarating, but fighting for your home and loved ones is another thing entirely. It's all-consuming and ruthless. The bandits were slain, one by one, and the two of us fought in battle, one last time. I managed to save the house, but it was badly damaged, and we were both injured in the fighting. We were safe and alive, and then it hit us. Before the bandits had arrived, my son had been laying down to sleep for his afternoon nap, hoping that whatever happened, he'd be safe. But in that very same wing of the house, where the fire had started, I kicked in the door and found him exactly where he was, lying on the cot I'd carved for him a few weeks earlier, and he wasn't breathing. I could barely contain myself as I took his body in my arms and walked out slowly to where my wife was waiting. I didn't have to say anything. As soon as she saw him, she collapsed to the ground and wept her heart out. It broke me. As much as we loved each other, that was the end of everything. I left my blade behind me, and I have been out here ever since. Pray that you never have to go through such a thing, traveler, for not even the gods can bear it. All I need is a warm drink. Gods know it's been cold out there. No, that ship has long since sailed. Last I heard, she was in the palace at Windhelm, her shield maiden days well behind her. We aren't enemies by any means, but even love can't survive the death of a child. It was for the best that we went our separate ways. I still love her, gods, with all my heart, but what we had was in the past. Now, well, now, all the two of us have are the memories together. His name was Torin, my boy, my son.
I'm getting on the first boat out of this accursed province. Those witches, they work in packs. You ever hear the story of Orphan Rock? It was a cabin somewhere on the north bank of the White, near Riverwood. A kind old lady was living there. Or so I thought. She let me stay the night, but told me not to go into the cellar. Naturally, I got curious. There was all sorts of oddities in there. I think she was a witch or a necromancer or something. In any case, I got out of that cellar and never stopped running. I know. I considered going to a face sculptor, but she refused to work with me.
Of myself. We just met, so we're hardly friends. Not to mean that we won't be friends someday, or even today. I'm sorry, I'm really bad at this. Can we start over? Oh, well met as well. I mean, well met and greetings. What I'm trying to say is, greetings and well met. Oh, sweet taffy treats, I did it again, didn't I? Well, I was kind of hoping I could. I know, you're probably thinking I've gone mad the way I fumbled through our meeting. And, truth is, I'm perfectly happy just being Netta the milkmaid. Well, my friends have all said that I have a great singing voice. I suppose they should, because that's what friends do. But after hearing it a number of times from different people, you start to think there might be something to it. So here I am. You mean like sing? Right here? Okay. But my voice is a little hoarse from practicing. Is there anything in particular you want to hear? You mean like a song that I wrote? Oh, I'm not that talented. I mean, I've written a few lyrics, and there's sort of a melody. How about I sing it, and you can give me some guidance as to whether it's good? All right, here goes. Falls on all the land, all the land, all the land. Snow falls on all the land, shrouded by dark wings. A child prayed unto the gods, save the land, save the land. And the god said unto the child, to Skyrim come spring. For our hero does walk the land, walk the land, walk the land. Our hero does walk the land, and the dragons will flee. Flowers bloom on the land, children walk hand in hand. Sun shining on white sand, to Skyrim comes peace. Thanks. It does seem to feel more natural than some of the other songs the bards sing. Probably because I wrote it for myself. True. On the one hand, all this anxiety can't be good for my health. Or my skin. On the other hand, at least now I can still cling to hope. I talked to Viarmo, and he said that Pantia Atea would hear my audition when her schedule clears up. Which is completely understandable. I imagine a master vocalist must have a very hectic schedule.
I never complain about life's unfairness. It is never fair.
It must be water,
It is impartial.
or some honey-based tea. It's hard to believe a master vocalist like Pantia would damage her vocal cords by drinking alcohol. At least not in public, anyways. Right now, my biggest fear is having my throat go hoarse the day Pantia calls my name. And I still haven't recovered from the bout of rust chancre. Of the bards from the college suggested chewing on Nirn root, but I wasn't sure if he was serious. You're probably right, but I can't afford something that fancy, and I'd feel bad asking Angeline for a favor, especially after all she did for me when I was sick. Oh no, Jack Bay in Hammerfell. I didn't come alone, though. My fiancé at the time came with me. He stuck it out here in Skyrim for a few months, but eventually boarded a ship headed back home. It's my fault, really. I knew he didn't want to come to Skyrim, and it was probably the guilt that made him follow me here. It's one of those things. If I loved him, I shouldn't have asked him to leave. If he loved me, he wouldn't have asked me to stay. So in the end, I guess neither of us loved each other. But we'd already invested so much time into the relationship, and so he sacrificed everything for me. And some swelling in my cheeks. But it was the damage to my throat that was the most depressing part. It took months before I could even speak. He got impatient. The truth was, he expected us to be back in Hammerfell before the crops were in season. I should have known he didn't sell the farm. You're just like my friends back in Hammerfell. They'd always compliment me on how pretty my voice was. Compliments are like sweets. Great the first time, fine the second. But after a while, it doesn't have the same flavor. You tell them to dream big because they can be whatever they want to be. But for them, it doesn't really mean anything. If they say they want to be a bard or a jarl, it's just another answer to a question. They might as well say they want to be an apple. Because it's real. I mean, look at this city. It's so large, so bright, and everything about it seems too impossible to exist. But it's not a dream. It's right there, in front of me. Isn't everybody? But if I had to say what frightens me, it isn't failing as a bard. I'm scared I'll wake up one morning, and there won't be a need for vocal training. I'm worried one day I won't have a reason to borrow Gerard's books. Think about all the wonderful people I've met here, and I'm scared to say goodbye. And not just the locals, but the travelers. People like yourself, as it were, even if I'm so dreadful at meeting them. Safe.
The most serene
Like to
place
see him
to
laugh
sit
his
and
way out
gather
of
our
that.
thoughts. If it weren't for that dead tree. And that screaming man.
Well,
Want to hear a
sounds
little
like
Nord
the
wisdom?
journey Uthgar.
You don't really know a
You were gone
woman
long
till you had a
enough.
strong drink
Forgot to think
and a
maybe you
fist
weren't
fight
coming
with her.
back.
The heat of the battle is the fire that forges the strongest blades. It's an old Nord proverb. That, and a true Nord never misses a chance to test her worth. And why not? I could beat anyone in this city, barehanded. 100 gold says I knock your hide to the ground. Just fists. No weapons, no magic, no crying. Let's go.
We'll pay whatever it takes, but we must have more swords for the Imperial soldiers.
I just can't fill an order that size on my own. Why don't you swallow that stubborn pride of yours and ask ᴛɪᴛԳᴇ for help?
I'd sooner bend my knee to Ulfric's Stormcloak. Besides, Greymane would never make
I never climbed the steps to Dragon's Reach without stopping to look out over the plains.
But don't
and
expect
breathe
a
the air that
miracle.
comes from outside the city. Then I envy the birds and all that fly.
Ride strong.
Take care. You're the Dragonborn, right? I'm Onion, and of course, I am also a healer. For you! You need a deal. How about you take me with you, and I'll guarantee your safety. Quite good, right? And I don't think my appearance will embarrass you. You mean you'll agree? Cheers! If you need me, just come to me. Or shall we set out now? Lead the way.